Last week I posted a video on the idea of hormesis, and this is a concept that says a low dose of something that would otherwise be damaging to the body and a high dose might actually be protective or beneficial or strengthening to the body. Things like exercise, calorie restriction, temperature, or phytochemicals all fit into this hormetic category in humans. But then I brought up the idea of maybe dehydration or chemical toxins. Could those be hormetic too? Well, that led me to find this paper. Now, I'll be honest, in the functional medicine nutritional world, we don't tend to report on things that don't fit our worldview, and this is one such paper, but I'm going to present it to you anyways because we need to get rid of this bias and we need to present what's out there in the science. Now look at the title. The effect of chronic vitamin deficiency and long-term very low-dose exposure to 6-pesticide mixture on neurological outcomes, a real-life risk simulation approach. What researchers did is they took 200 mice and they broke them into 4 groups. There was a vitamin sufficient group, a vitamin deficient group, a vitamin sufficient group exposed to toxins, and a vitamin deficient group also exposed to toxins. It was a 9-month study, which is about 25% of a rat's life. And the toxins that they were exposed to was a combination of 6 herbicides or pesticides in 100 times below the no observable adverse effect level, which if you know anything about toxicology is a really low dose of these toxins. And then they looked at some neurological outcomes. So let's take a look at the results. Compared to the control group, which was the vitamin sufficient group, the vitamin deficient group had a decrease in locomotor activity, a decrease in spatial orientation, increased anxiety, and no real changes to their memory. The vitamin sufficient group that was exposed to toxins had a similar pattern. They had a decrease in locomotor activity, a decrease in spatial orientation, an increase in anxiety, and again, no real changes in their memory. But here was the interesting part. The vitamin deficient group, who was also exposed to toxins, showed an increase in central nervous system stimulation. They had an increase in locomotor activity, an increase in spatial orientation, and a decrease in anxiety. They, unfortunately, also had a decrease in long-term memory, which is the only thing that seemed to be a downside. Now, researchers said that this was likely due to some hormetic effect, that low-dose toxin exposure, and they weren't sure why this was the case with vitamin deficiency, actually had a protective beneficial effect on the central nervous system. There's a few potential problems with this study. Number one, rat detoxification capacities don't necessarily correlate to human detoxification capacities, so we might not be able to extrapolate this information and apply this to humans. 2, we have no idea what our exposure to toxins are. Is it a very low dose? Is it a moderate dose? 3 is we only looked at neurological outcomes in this study. They didn't look at the endocrine system, they didn't look at the immune system, so we don't know the global impacts that this might have had on these particular mice. And then lastly is they looked at vitamins, were only B vitamins and vitamin K. Specifically, it was vitamin B1, B2, B3, B5, B9, B12, and vitamin K. There are other vitamins and minerals that could have been deficient, but they weren't, and that might have contributed to this as well. So I want to hear from you. What can we make from this study? Could it be that low-dose toxins have a hormetic effect on us? If so, how does one determine what their toxic load is, and if it's hormetic and beneficial, or if it's overloading the body and it's not beneficial? So please leave your comments below. I'd love to start this conversation because I think it's an important one, and I want to hear what you think about this study.